All Americans should be grateful to the Speaker's leadership, and for Minority Leader Schumer's leadership. We're going to work in the direction of making sure that we make sure that everyone, in fact, has access to education. I'm going to endorse. I've endorsed the loss of that you would have, in fact, any doctor's bill you have. But even I can't do that for another a year between now and November, or actually January. They can't build any factories or anything within 1 mile of the estuary of the Delaware River and the Atlantic Ocean and the Chesapeake. And so the whole point of this is that we can do a lot to deal with endangered species. We have to take care of the cure. That will make the problem worse no matter what. Why doesn't he just act like a president? That's a stupid way to say it.
You know, Donald Trump was asked on...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, probably best I don't. I just can't figure the guy. I don't know, it's like watching a yo-yo. I shouldn't have said it that way. It's like watching...
It feels that way. I want to ask...
We need to activate the reserve corps of doctors and nurses and beef up the number of responders dealing with these crush of cases. And in addition to that, we have to make sure that we are in a position that we are. Well, let me go to the second thing. I've spoken enough of that. We can make a personal productive equipment. Look, here's the deal. We have to do what we did in the 40s and the 20s, the 2020s, tending to our elderly loved ones. This is the United States of America. Thank you all for listening. Oh, thanks. Okay.
So that wasn't the video where he's coughing, but that was the video that was showing that he can't do interviews. Joe Biden cannot do interviews.
6-year-old fam. It's
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah, he really.
you're gonna really tell me that America voted for this fucking clown here? And seriously, I mean, I don't know anybody I convince to say that Joe Biden is better than Donald Trump.
I think one of the reasons why Joe Biden pretty much disappeared for a while was because he was sick and they're trying to cover it up. And, you know, they did a whole like green screen thing. And just this is some of it is the same as before, but the majority of it is when he had his interview on CNN, and he needed to learn how to cough. So let's just play it.
Virus. I have not been tested for the coronavirus. I've had, thank God, no symptoms that I'm aware of. Doesn't mean that can't happen.
Up for the next round of primaries, including...
I've not talked to any individual. Excuse me.
You know, you're supposed to cough into your elbow. I don't know, sir. I learned that actually covering your White House.
Actually, that's true, but fortunately, I'm alone in my home, but that's okay.
Vice President Biden, thank you so much for your time. Please stay healthy.
For keeping businesses shut.
We have to take care of the cure. That will make the problem worse no matter what.
And what is it like to be a candidate in the time of social distancing?
Well, I'm doing fine, thank you. And I think we've been
public. But first, when this crisis, spoke earlier. He's talking.
And I tell you what, I'm so darn proud. And those poor people who have lost, anyway, it's just, my heart goes out to them.
No. Listen, we have to make a choice about who leads this country.
I just can't figure the guy. I don't know, it's like watching a yo-yo. I shouldn't have said it that way. It's like watching...
It feels that way. I want to ask... That's okay. About the reporting in the New York Floyd to Home Alone with children.
Why doesn't he just act like a president? That's a stupid way to say it.
You know, Donald Trump was asked on...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, probably best I don't.
So now you're coughing like Joe Biden. Okay.
Why don't you just go away?
So yeah, I think he's obviously not mentally fit as anymore. I think he's obviously not healthy. He doesn't look it. He's not acting like it. And these are the problems that Joe Biden has to deal with. And another problem of Joe Biden's is that he puts his foot in his mouth all the time. And I think it's because he's confused, because I thought he was running for president to beat Donald Trump. But now he's saying that Donald Trump's got this. So according to Matt Visor, Joe Biden on President Trump rising approval rating numbers, he said, well, I hope that he does. He's so strong that he's up way above that because we need the help now. We need help now. He's praising Donald Trump. And in another article, he spoke about how he didn't really want to attack Donald Trump on the coronavirus. Now, I get it. We are trying to solve the problem. We are trying to give aid to people. But at the same time, he's been praising Donald Trump in a way that just doesn't seem like he's really, really in it. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was something Donald Trump can attack him on, right? Because we know that Donald Trump can attack him from the left on NAFTA. He can attack him from the left on Social Security. He can attack him from the left when it comes to trade and even foreign policy.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
So he
terrible.
can attack him from the left on all these things. And he can, of course, use the impeachment trial, and he will, as a means of making fun of the entire Democratic establishment. And he'd be right on that. But another thing he's going to use is this new accusation against Joe Biden. And the accusation isn't necessarily new, but it's just come fully forward and fully out. And Katie Halper interviewed this woman who allegedly was raped. But Katie Halper did a great job on this story. And her name is Tara Reid. And she has been trying to tell her story since it happened in 1993. And it's a story about sexual assault, retaliation, and silencing. And before we go into the video, I'm kind of going to read through this thread because it's important that you guys know some of the background. So Tara had tried to come forward with a part of her story after the Lucy Flores accusation of Biden of touching her inappropriately. Reid was one of the 7 other women to share their own stories about Biden. And Reid told reporters about the way he would put his hands on her shoulders, run his fingers up and down her neck. She considered talking about the rest of the story, but didn't because of her claims of sexual harassment got her doxxed and smeared as a Russian agent. And this thing right here is what irritated me the most, because this is what the Democratic establishment does to women if you don't fit their mold of supporting Bill Clinton, Joe Biden, Epstein, and all of these nefarious men that have so much power. They completely say, believe women unless it's one of these guys that they protect. And that goes out to Alyssa Milano as well, who has been talking about how Joe Biden is so amazing, even during these moments. And it's completely ignored this accusation. Completely ignored it. Reid tried to come forward again. She tried to come forward to Time's Up Now. Time's Up is, of course, the Me Too organization. And Ryan Grimm reported this on The Intercept. The organization said they couldn't help her because Biden was a candidate for federal office and supporting a case against him could jeopardize the nonprofit status. Wow. That's terrible. Grimm also pointed out that the public relations firm that works on behalf of Time's Up, their legal defense fund, is SKD Knickerbocker. And the managing director, Anita Dunn, is the top advisor to Biden's presidential campaign. So there you go. That's the rabbit hole connection. Not surprisingly, there were no witnesses to the alleged sexual assault. But Tara's brother and her good friend, each of whom I've spoken with, recall being told about the assault by Tara at the time. This is a story that should have been looked into. Tara reached out to countless people to try to get her story. Nobody, not even the one organization that was made to support women like her. So let's just hear some of this.
This opens with Tara describing a superior calling her into her office to ask her to do an errand. So she says that she
called me in and said, I want you to take this to Joe. He wants it. He wants you to bring it. Hurry. And I said, okay. And it was a gym bag. She said, take the gym bag. She called it athletic bag. And, she said he was down towards the Capitol and he'll meet you. And so I went down and I was heading down towards there. And he was at first talking to someone. I could see him at a different distance, and then they went away. And then we were in like the side. It was like the side area, and he just said, "Hey, come here, Tara." And then I handed him the thing, and he greeted me. He remembered my name. And then we were alone, and it was the strangest thing. There was no like exchange really. He just had me up against the wall. And I was wearing like a skirt and, business skirt, but I wasn't wearing stockings. It was kind of a hot day that day, and I was wearing heels. And I remember my legs had been hurting from the marble, of the Capitol, like walking. And so I remember that kind of stuff. I remember like I was wearing a blouse and he just had me up against the wall and the wall was cold. And I remember it happened all at once. The gym bag, I don't know where it went. I handed it to him, it was gone. And then his hands were on me and underneath my clothes. And and then he went down my skirt, but then up inside it. And he penetrated me with his fingers, whatever. And he was kissing me at the same time, and he was saying something to me. He said several things, and I can't remember everything he said. I remember a couple of things. I remember him saying first, before, like as he was doing it, do you want to go somewhere else? And then him saying to me, when I pulled away, he got finished doing what he was doing, and I kind of was pulled back, and he said, come on, man, I heard you liked me. And it's that phrase stayed with me because I kept thinking what I might have said. And I can't remember exactly if he said I thought or if I heard, but it's like he implied like that I had done this. Like, I don't know. And for me, it was like everything shattered in that moment, because I knew like we were alone. It was over, right? He wasn't trying to do anything more, but I looked up to him. He was like my father's age. He was this champion of women's rights in my eyes. And I couldn't believe it was happening. It seemed surreal. And I just felt sick because when he pulled back, he looked annoyed. I must have looked shocked, and he grabbed me by the shoulders. I don't know how I looked, but I must have looked something, because he grabbed me by the shoulders and he said, "You're okay. You're fine. You're okay. You're fine." And my body, I was shaking everywhere and it was cold all of a sudden. And I don't know, I felt like I was shaking just everywhere. And I was trying to grasp what had just happened and what I should do.
Okay. So that's what she explains obviously happened. And of course, if we look into how she tried to reach out, and these organizations like Time's Up, who literally are the quote unquote beacon of the Me Too movement, pretty much just dismissed her, and then of course framed her as a Russian agent. And I wanted to just play the last part where she talks about what he said that she didn't want to mention, which is really important, because this is what not people in positions of power, but specifically these men and these politicians, whether they're producers, directors, politicians, they have this is about power. It is about power. And Joe Biden is a guy who may look senile, who may look, incapable now. But there was a moment when he was a very powerful man, and when he stood there talking, about cutting people's Social Security so brazenly and arrogantly. And this is the Joe Biden this is why it irks me when people like Bernie Sanders say Joe Biden is my friend, when people like Tulsi Gabbard say Joe Biden has a good heart. This is why, because that's the Joe Biden that I look at. And the whole point of this is that Donald Trump is going to throw this in the faces of the Democrats and be like, oh, you guys accuse me of sexual assault and all of this, and I was talked about how I'm a sexist, and look at what Joe Biden did. Look at what Uncle Joe did. Yeah. I'm telling you, he's going to use this, and I mean, obviously it's there for him to use.
Yeah,
so,
and despite any differences, Fee, amen to what you just said. Both of them. He's my friend. He's got a good heart. Bullshit. I would say something if it was just one situation where you go, okay, that's one situation. He's claiming his innocence, okay? But there's 8 situations now, 8 different women, just like Trump, just like Clinton. Enough with these fucking people.
It was bad because he was so angry. Like when he left, like I could feel, how when someone's angry, they don't necessarily have to say anything. Like he smiles when he's angry, and you can just feel it emanating from him. Like,
do you want to share that thing that you said you don't like? You said like I don't want to say what he said, that thing he said to you.
Yeah, I guess I could.
I mean, you don't have to.
It's okay. It's just, it's almost like giving a weapon to them. It's like, I don't want them to know how much it hurt. I don't, I don't want him to know I don't know. But
that you remembered it.
Yeah. Just I don't know. But yeah, I can say it. Yeah, there was something he said that I didn't want to say, and I didn't want to say it because it's the thing that stays in my head over and over, and it's a thing that kind of stayed with me over the years. But he said, after I pulled away, and he had said, "Hey, come on, I heard you liked me." He took his finger, he just pointed at me, and he said, "You're nothing to me." And then he just looked at me and he goes, "You're nothing, nothing." And I must have reacted because that's when he took me by the shoulders and he said, "You're okay. You're fine. You're okay."
Yeah. So, you're nothing. Telling somebody that that they're nothing after you do something like that is obviously, it just shows you. I mean, this isn't the first time I've seen accusations against Joe Biden. You can see in his behavior with women how he's treated them, and that's something that people like Bernie Sanders won't ever touch, which is it sucks because he should. People are saying now on Twitter, how can Bernie endorse this guy who has sexually assaulted women? How can Tulsi do that? I mean, this is not okay. Yeah. This is not okay. It doesn't matter if you want him to beat Donald Trump. This is not okay, and by endorsing him, you guys are dismissing that. Yeah. All of the people who are ready to endorse Joe Biden.
Yeah. And there's serious proof of Joe Biden, the way he touches women, the way he smells women, the way he tried to bite his wife's finger, and all this other shit. This creepy. I mean, it's just all creepy. Over the fucking place. So when these people who say he's my friend or he has a good heart, I mean, don't you understand that? I understand the system that we have is so fucking terrible, but I mean, you got to understand the repercussions that come with it when you're going to stand behind a man like Joe Biden. Amongst all his policies, that's awful, and the war hawk he is, and he was the first one to talk about building a fence. I'm the guy who wanted to build a fence. And believe me, they're bringing in bad people. And this was Joe Biden way before Donald Trump ever said this shit.
Yep. So Bernie Sanders is another problem that obviously Joe Biden has, because Bernie Sanders has been every single day, live streaming, right?
Yeah.
He's been talking about how we need to deal with this crisis. He's been talking about what he would do. And Bernie Sanders is also, in 2005, he explained why drug firms should not make a profit from a pandemic. So again, Bernie Sanders was ahead of his time in politics forever. You can always find a video, like I said, a video where there's Joe Biden and Bernie standing up against something Joe Biden is saying. And I think people are realizing that. The problem is, of course, we have a rigged system. So even if people do realize that, is it going to be enough to overtake what is happening, especially when places like New York are still trying to have the election, when they're not giving everybody vote by mail, which is what they should do, at least give everybody the option of doing that. And of course, have a more secure way of tracking vote by mail, because you can actually track the mail and the signatures and all of that. So that could be something that we could do that might work to Bernie's benefit. But the reality is, people are so focused on the pandemic. This is why he's focused on it as well.
Perhaps Mr. Duncan was right in suggesting that we may be overreacting. But I believe that the American people want us to be safe rather than sorry. I think they will forgive us if we end up doing things and spending money that in the long run may turn out not to be necessary, if in fact we are going forward vigorously to prevent what could be a horrible, horrible situation. I think we all remember or read that in 1918, some 50 million people in this world died from an influenza epidemic, and I think it is beholden upon our country and governments throughout the world to do everything that we can in every way to protect the American people and people throughout the world. I think Mr. Kucinich a moment ago raised some very important issues. And the issue is that our job as the government of the United States of America is not to worry at this moment about the corporate profits of the Roche Company or any other drug company, but to make certain that we are doing all that we can to prepare for what could be a terrible pandemic. I hope that in that context, we can all agree that now is not the time to be tiptoeing around intellectual property rights or for letting bald-faced profiteering inhibit our ability to prepare for a pandemic. Roche is the only company with a license to manufacture and sell Tamiflu in the United States. They have limited production capacity and simply cannot make enough Tamiflu to meet the demand. The World Health Organization says that it will take 10 years for Roche to adequately supply world demand for Tamiflu stockpiles. We don't have 10 years. Unfortunately, Roche has also been dragging its feet about licensing other manufacturers to mass produce it. So, Mr. Secretary, you come from an administration where most of the American people know bends over backwards to protect large multinational corporations, whether it's drug companies or oil companies. Now is not the time to worry about the profits or campaign contributions. Now is the time to protect the American people.
There's Bernie Sanders pretty much speaking truth to power, and like he knew what was going to happen, right? Because I mean, we had what? We've had the SARS, we've had the avian flu, we've had all these scares, and Tamiflu, again, just to remind you, is one of the drugs that Daniel Day Kim mentioned helped him out a lot. And of course, we have never been prepared. I mean, our healthcare system alone kept us unprepared.
Yeah.
And the last thing that Joe Biden has that's an issue is that he's not really going to fight. And I think we already mentioned this. Biden said, "I don't want to be in a political fight with Trump over coronavirus." And again, he doesn't want to fight. He's asking people to replace him. And he said here, quote, "I have not been criticizing the president, but I have been pointing out where there is a disagreement on how to proceed." And he told this on the ABC's The View. "The coronavirus is not his fault, but the lack of speed with which to respond to has to move much faster. This is not about Democrat or Republican. This is not about what your party is. It's about getting through this." He doesn't look like he's a strong contender against Donald Trump, obviously, in addition to everything else that he has been lacking in.